In the name of the risen Christ, amen. Did you ever want to change your name? My name is Susan. When I was 9, I wished it were Dorothea or Penelope. I think I just wanted more syllables. It wasn't a serious thing. But my older sister, Brenda Marie, did change her name. She's 15 going on 16. We were moving from one town to another. She was so tired of being Brenda, she wanted to be Marie. In fact, while she was processing this, she wrote a letter home from camp addressed to my father and pointed out that my name, which is Susan Carroll, means singing lily, and hers meant sword of bitterness. What's up with that? So when we moved from one town to another and she went to a new high school for 11th grade, she decided that she was no longer Brenda, she was Marie. Because she had a bit of a Southern accent at that point, well, it was charming. It was fabulous. She loved being Marie. It gave her new confidence. And if I look back, I want to say that Marie Harris was actually a happier person than Brenda Harris had been. The change of the name meant a lot. It took the family some doing to adjust. We still called her Brenda. She's been dead for 10 years now. I'm sorry we called her Brenda. It was a little bit of a symbol of our not accepting the change that she'd made. Marie. God changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel on that fearful night in Genesis 32 when they wrestled on the ground until daybreak. Jacob was on a dangerous and difficult journey at the time. You might remember that he had had a pretty serious falling out with his family some years before when he cheated his brother Esau, both of his birthright and their father's blessing. And that Esau, after that incident, wanted to kill him. Jacob ran away with his parents' blessing to his uncle Laban's tents and worked for Laban, hoping to marry Laban's daughter Rachel, but then Laban cheated him out of 7 years of labor and gave him Leah instead. So then he worked another 7 years to win Rachel. 14 years of labor on somebody else's property. He had 10 sons with Leah, and at this point he had 1 with Rachel. But God had blessed him, and he was thriving and had begun to believe that Laban was jealous of him. So he had sort of not that great relationships with his uncle and with his brother, and that threat from Esau was still hanging over his head after all these years. But Esau and Jacob had agreed to meet. And Jacob had heard that Esau was coming to meet him with 400 men. 400. Jacob decided to face it, but he devised a strategic plan. He separated the 2 wives and their households and sent them separately in front of him, thinking that one household might be attacked and the other spared, or that once Esau realized Jacob was not with the household, he would spare them both. So he sent them on, and he traveled alone and spent that night sleeping on the ground. Then came the wrestling. Was it a man? Was it an angel? Was it a dream? The text is ambiguous, but what's very clear is that the wrestling was physical. He had this struggle in his body. His opponent hurt him, bruising his hip or his thigh. It's hard to know from the text, but somewhere in that joint, injuring him so that he would limp for the rest of his life. But as he was attacked by this angel, he fought back and wrestled and refused to let his opponent go. The opponent, the angel, the man, God, asked him his name. And when he said Jacob, he was given the new name Israel with the blessing that would follow. That wasn't enough. Jacob said, I will not let you go until you bless me. I will not let you go until you bless me. When he woke up, when he came away from that night, he said, I have seen God and lived. Now, if you go on into the story, you'll see that the meeting between Jacob and Esau was tricky, but basically went well. They embraced, they wept like the brothers that they were. Esau wanted them to travel on together from there, but I think Jacob was still wary. He found a way to go in another direction, say, I'm traveling with children, they're too slow, you'll have to hang back for us, why don't you go ahead? But they parted in a kind of uneasy peace. But at least the peace was there. And we have there the founding of Israel. Jacob's name was changed. He was changed. There was the matter of the limp. There was the matter of the name. Had he also changed himself? Do you know the story of John Newton, the man who wrote the hymn Amazing Grace? There was a Broadway show based on it and a film, which changed the story up a little bit. When he wrote the words to Amazing Grace, to a different tune than when we sing, by the way, it was 1872. By then, he was an Anglican priest. But before that, he had been a slave trader. He was a seaman, and later a sea captain. He sailed on as crew and eventually led the ships that carried slaves. He had a major conversion experience on a ship called the Pegasus that nearly wrecked in a storm off the coast of Ireland. He believed that he had survived solely through the grace of God, and he began to profess his Christianity. But he still sailed ships carrying slaves. He didn't change his behavior yet. I think it's an important piece of the story. He did 3 more voyages on 2 different ships before he gave it up and went to seminary. He had renounced the work privately, but it took him years to do so. When he finally renounced it publicly, he wrote a pamphlet. This was some 34 years after his conversion. He wrote a pamphlet called Thoughts Upon the Slave Trade. He wrote, "It will always be a subject of humiliating reflection to me that I was once an active instrument in a business at which my heart now shudders." The pamphlet was wildly popular in England and reprinted many times. Every member of Parliament received a copy. Finally, in 1807, a year before Newton died, slavery was outlawed in England. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Sometimes we need a profound change, a change that begins from within. Sometimes the change within is not reflected in our actions or in the world around us, Sometimes that change within will not be noticed for a long time. But the change bears fruit. I'm beginning to think that for real change to happen in these troubled times, the hearts of women and men have to change. We may believe we can't do it. We also may expect too much from the changes we try to make ourselves. Jacob suffered again after wrestling with God. It solved a lot of his problems. It didn't solve them all. There was trouble with those sons. The 10, the Leah's sons, really couldn't stand Rachel's boy, Joseph. You'll hear more about that as the year goes on. But Jacob didn't actually stop suffering, but he changed. He changed. I think the lesson that we see in Jacob's life and in the lessons that we've had this summer are telling us that people do change. They do change. I've been thinking all week about that spiritual that Roberta Flack recorded years ago. I told Jesus it'd be all right if he changed my name. I told Jesus it'd be all right if you changed my name. If you changed my name. What within you could respond to your restlessness, your wrestling with God in such a way that someone new arrives within you? Amen.
Before you go, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends. God bless.